Welcome to the Department Chair Leadership Podcast, where the goal is to improve organizations and serve students one leader at a time. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Jochum. If you're a department chair in higher education or any type of educational leader, and you want to improve yourself to better serve and influence those you lead, you've come to the right place. Because the best way to improve an organization is to improve its leader. Let's get started. Welcome back, friends, and thank you for taking some time to invest in yourself and those you serve by focusing on your leadership development. Hey, before we get into today's episode, I just want to let you know of a great professional development opportunity that you really want to consider. It's called the Academic Chairpersons Conference, and it takes place February 7th through the 9th, 2024 in Indianapolis. I cannot think of a single event that has contributed more to my development as a chair and leader than this conference. Also, as a member of the advisory board, trust me, we have a great lineup of presentations, workshops, and invited speakers. So, hey, there's still time to register, so check out the show notes for the links. Today, I want to talk to you about culture. Now, this is all-encompassing, and we could dedicate an entire season of episodes to this topic. And in all fairness, we'll address this more in the future from many levels, including hearing from others. But today, the focus of this episode is somewhat of an introduction to what culture means as a leader of any organization, but also how to approach it from the perspective of the department chair. So hopefully, if you've listened to a few of my episodes, you know I always, in addition to the what, want to tell you why, and finally what I want from you. So why are we doing this? Because culture is everywhere, and in some ways, it's everything. You know, my leadership framework and definition is influenced through courage, character, relationships, and service. However, culture, it's housed, every philosophy or definition, I should say, of leadership is housed in culture. In many ways, culture is the plate upon which our leadership philosophy and our leadership practice resides. The culture you create, curate, promote, monitor, repair, all of the above. It's the leader's job to do all that and set the tone. Culture can be thought of as, in some ways, the organizational oxygen that everyone breathes. Look, whether you want it to or not, culture finds its way into every nook and cranny of the organization, and for better or for worse, it takes root. Another way to describe this is to think of culture as a swimming pool. Everyone in your organization, whether they want to or not, must swim in the same pool, and there's no such thing as a clean and unclean section of the pool. One thing gets in, and it affects everyone. So as leaders, friends, your job is in many ways to be the lifeguard and manager of that pool and make sure people are safe and that nothing toxic gets into the water. So, what do I want for you as a result of this episode? Well, simple. I want you to recognize that no matter what you do, even if you do nothing at all, you are always promoting, reinforcing, and refining the culture of your organization. It really is up to you. So what I'm going to share today are the 7 realities of leading effective cultures. Before we get into that, though, I want to share just a few of my favorite definitions of culture. First one, got to go to the dictionary. So Merriam-Webster's definition is, culture is a set of shared attitudes, values, goals, and practices that characterizes an institution or organization. Okay, that makes sense. Another one from one of my favorite leadership authors, John Maxwell, says that culture is the expression of the values of the people within the organization. Another author, John Amici, says culture can be defined as the worst behavior tolerated. Think about that for a little bit. The worst behavior that we not only tolerate, but perhaps reward, it's how we define the overriding culture of our organization. And then one way that I have defined or that I refer to culture, and I mentioned this in my book, The Department Chair, A Practical Guide to Effective Leadership, is I say we encourage what we tolerate and normalize what we ignore. So what are my 7 realities of leading effective cultures? Well, here they are. I'll tell you them first, and then we'll break them down a little bit. Number 1, 7 realities of leading effective cultures. As the leader, I am always promoting, protecting, and affecting culture. Number 2, while I set the tone, culture is a shared responsibility. Number 3, we are what we repeatedly do. Number 4, comfort or growth. Number 5, we've said this in many other instances, but it's so true in culture, so I'm going to use it again. Number 5 is what got us here won't get us there. Number 6, enduring organizational change is based on habits and identity. And then 7, we do what we do because of what we think of ourselves and others. So let's dig into this. Again, culture is so very, very important. In some ways, when you're troubleshooting things in an organization, it's not a cure-all, but I promise you the two things that we always want to look at is can we trace this back to culture and relationships. There was a movie probably more years ago than I want to admit, but it was called My Big Fat Greek Wedding. And, the running joke was the father could cure anything with Windex. And then towards the end, it kind of took a turn and we saw that, they were able to cure something with Windex. Well, in some ways, somewhat in jest, but in truth, a lot of the problems that you're going to troubleshoot, a lot of the problems that you might inherit or that have just grown bigger than they should have, you can trace it back to culture. You can trace it back to relationships. It's not a cure-all, but I tell you what, it's going to cure a lot of things. So it's so important that we will talk more about this. But today, the 7 realities of leading effective cultures. So the first one, number 1, as the leader, I'm always promoting, protecting, and affecting culture. Every step you take, another reference, there was a song, I don't know, in the 80s, about every step you take, I'll be watching you. Yeah, as the leader of your organizational culture, every step you take, every word you say, your actions, etc., believe it or not only think of yourself as everyone's watching, but it's also sending a message. You can do nothing, say nothing, and you're still going to be sending a message. The thing about culture and being a leader is it's not up to you. You are both affected by and will affect the culture, regardless of what you do. So you might as well be intentional about it. So remember, every step you take, people are watching you. You're always what I call pitching product. And I don't mean that in a negative sense, but to use a sales term, you are the chief cheerleader, you are the chief promoter, and you're always pitching your culture, your product, how you interact with others is basically transmitting your culture. As a leader, again, under number 1, another way to realize that you're always promoting, protecting, and affecting culture is decision by decision. What are your guiding principles? What type of culture do you want to create? Do you want to sustain? And do you want to improve upon? And your decisions, whether you realize it or not, are going to reflect the culture and they're going to set the culture. Number 2 of the 7 realities of leading effective cultures is while I set the tone as a leader, culture is a shared responsibility. Yes, you cannot do it alone and you would not want to because that would, you can't be a micromanager and dictate culture. So even though it starts with you, you can't do it alone. No, you got to bring others along with you. But again, that gets into your core values. What do you believe as a leader? What is your leadership philosophy? and how relationship by relationship, decision by decision, conversation by conversation, how are you going to set that tone, and then how are you going to bring others along with you? Remember, if you're not bringing others along with you, you're not leading. I don't know. Maybe you're just wandering around on your own. But it's a shared responsibility, and so setting the culture. Yes, it starts with you as a leader. As leaders, we set the tone, but it is a shared responsibility. Number 3, we are what we repeatedly do. We've heard this before, and you've already heard me say that success, I define success daily, not in a day. So your daily agenda, we've talked about that before. Yes, how you design and how you live out your day is going to have a huge impact on the culture that you convey and the culture that you create. And it isn't something that can be fixed. You can't establish or fix your culture with a workshop or a retreat or reading a certain amount of articles. It's day by day, decision by decision, interaction by interaction. It's what you repeatedly do. It's simple things. How do you greet people? How do you handle conflict? How do you encourage others to treat each other? James Clear, if you have not read his work, please do. One thing that he says that really resonates true to we are what we repeatedly do, especially in the context of creating a healthy organizational culture as a leader. He says, quote, "Every action you take is a vote for the person you wish to become." Every action you take is a vote for the person you wish to become. So true as a leader. So let's put this in organization, in the context of organizational culture. You can change this to every action you take as a leader is a vote for the culture you want to live in. Okay? And let's drill down a little more. All of the things that you do as a leader are going to convey and support, for better or for worse, your culture. So again, James Clear, every action you take is a vote for the person you want to become. So as a leader, every hire you make is a vote for the culture you want to live in. Every conversation you have is a vote for the culture you want to live in. Unfortunately, if you're a leader long enough, you'll do this. Every dismissal, every personnel dismissal is still a vote for the type of culture you want to lead in. And one thing I'll lead you here on number 3. Friends, this is hard and it's human nature, but I'm just going to tell you this. Everything you ignore is also a vote for the type of culture that you're going to live in and that your people will live in. Number 4 for 7 realities. Said this a lot, but it's so true. We've heard many times, comfort and growth, they don't get along very well. Okay, comfort and growth do not get along. And I saw a visual one time of 2 people at a table represent. One was comfort, one was growth, and growth was looking across the table at comfort, saying, this just isn't going to work out. Yes, we are naturally fearful of change, but listen, change has to happen to grow. And as a leader, I promise you, I bet a big part of your job description and the way that you are currently evaluated is based upon something growing. Now, no, it's not all about metrics. I hope we're growing our people. But let's be honest, the business we're in, right, higher education, there are things that we have to create a culture that ultimately a byproduct is enrollment grows, research productivity grows, extramural funding grows, engagement grows, retention grows, recruiting grows. All right, we need to grow, and sometimes it isn't comfortable, but we need to realize that we are creating a culture that makes it okay that we're going to choose growth over comfort. Number 5 of the 7 realities of leading effective cultures. We've said this many times, but it's true in many facets of leadership. What got us here won't get us there. One of the worst things that we can hear in any culture is that's how we've always done it. And I'm sure you've seen that in many contexts. I always say the status quo means failure to grow. If status quo is actually regressing. So we need to understand, and this goes along with that comfort versus growth mindset, that it's okay to have a culture where we realize that what got us here won't get us there. It doesn't mean we only need to focus on this mindset of, growth over everything else and just focus on numbers. Because I always say we need to put morale over metrics. But nonetheless, we need to understand that we have to continue to evolve as an organization, and that's culture. Again, the culture is the oxygen that we breathe. It's a plate that everything sits on as leaders. If you don't have good culture grounded in relationships and a strong foundation, everything else will suffer. So one thing to always remind, to get us in the right mindset for what got us here won't get us there as a culture, is realizing that always asking ourselves, what do we need to start doing? What do we need to stop doing? And what do we need to keep doing? It's just a little quick way to make sure we're always keeping that in the right direction. Number 6 of the 7 realities of leading effective culture is enduring organizational change, which we know is necessary. Enduring organizational change is based on habits and identity. So a lot of this is tied together. What do we do on a daily basis? How do we interact with people? How do we hold people accountable? How do we have difficult conversations? We can't become something that we can't see. And how you cast your vision as a leader, or how can you cast it, I should say, if you don't have one? So we have to pay attention to how are our daily habits and our identity. What does that say about the reality of our culture? And a lot of times the gap between who we are and what we want to become, or who we want to become, whether it's as individuals or organizations, a good bridge, a good map to getting where we want to get is, let's look at and change our habits and our identity. What do we need to do on a daily basis that says we are the type of organization that fill in the blank? Are we acting in a way that says we truly identify with that or not? Because it's so important, leaders have to see beyond the horizon and get ahead of things. And so number 6, enduring organizational change is based on habits and identity. A great way to identify your culture and get it moving in the right direction is identifying those habits that are maybe holding us back, that aren't in line with our core values, and then keeping those that are. The last one of the 7 realities of leading effective cultures: we do what we do because of what we think of ourselves and others. So true, right? So true. And this might be a bit more personal, but we really, as leaders, we create and promote our culture, one person, one habit, one relationship at a time. So if we want to understand why we have our current culture and what we must do to achieve the desired one, we have to understand how we collectively see ourselves and the extent to which we need to change that. So I found it's always helpful to remind ourselves we do what we do because we think of ourselves and others. So if this is digging a little deeper than identifying and changing habits and identity. How is our behavior? How is our collective culture? Remember, one of the definitions is the worst behavior tolerated. Okay, so what does that say about how we think of ourselves and others? If we have a more positive view of ourselves and others, then those daily interactions hopefully will be more positive, and that's going to contribute to a positive culture. If we have a more negative view of ourselves and others, then you know what? Every daily interaction is going to contribute in a negative way, and before too long, we will have built up a negative culture. So I want to really encourage you on that one to think, to maybe, self-reflect a little. And what do we do what we do because of what we think of ourselves and others. Are there some things that maybe, even if you don't mean to, that you're doing that are sending a negative message and building a negative culture? What are the things that you know you're doing that are sending the positive message and building the positive culture, and how can you build upon those? So again, friends, I just wanted to leave you today with the 7 realities of leading effective cultures. I hope it was valuable to you and to your professional and continued development as a leader. So as always, thank you for joining me on the Department Chair Leadership Podcast. I wish you well, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Department Chair Leadership Podcast. If you want to learn more about my leadership philosophy and how to be an effective chair, please consider my book, The Department Chair, A Practical Guide to Effective Leadership. You can find this and learn more about me by going to cjleadership.com. Also, please be sure to like this podcast, leave a review, and share with your colleagues. Thanks again for improving your organization and those you serve by improving yourself. Take care.